a lot of spiritual teachers talk about the idea that we have a reason for manifesting in this matrix, a life path, an individual true will, or a higher purpose. Again, it sounds good. I think we want to feel important rather than like we're just a speck on a slightly bigger speck in an infinite universe. But how can we reach that aha moment where we really discover why we're here or what we're meant to do?
Well, the moment that we really stop giving our power away, and to make it as simple as possible, because again we're getting into very, very complex topics, but not something that we can actually I can explain. So I just try to simplify it as easy as possible, just for those who may be a little bit new to the content. But it's just like this: that everyone does indeed have a star in the sky, that we all correspond to a light, and a very bright light. But the distance between us and that light is likened unto our ability to realize that we existed way before we got here, and we actually come from non-existence. So that really boggles the brain. It's not even something that can really be comprehended by the physical mind. But our connection with ourselves on that expanded level is the key to our total realization of how much power and ability that we really have. So when we're in these kind of matrices, what we often are is overshadowed by, let's say, stars that actually are more aware of their connections. So we know enough that there's definitely societies that have, launched almost since the beginning of when we started counting time. And there's adherents to those societies that have actually studied this in depth. And mainly the king, and this is some things that are often missed within this reality, is the amount of influence that comes onto realities like this for thousands of years of what we would call the priest kings. And in those sects, what you have is you have this kind of knowledge about really astronomy. Like sometimes when people say astrology, then it gets into the paper and, reading your zodiac. But this is more of astronomy, and it's teaching you the position of the stars and the power that comes from the emission or the lights from stars. And if you can ever magnify or get yourself in tune with those kind of celestial bodies, because it's light energy, then you find yourself being able to not only master yourself, but if there's some abuse going on, even able to master others. So the difficulty that we face here is first reestablishing the connection with ourselves. It's very similar to like when the umbilical cord is cut when a child is being born. The child feels like then that it's been separated from the mother, but this is all illusionary. It's part of the physical reality. It's almost like the phantom limb phenomenon when someone gets their arm cut off in the reality, or in this illusionary reality, let's say, then when you see them on the astral plane, though, they still have that emission that arm is still there. And most of the time they still dream that they have that arm. And this is because that there's actually no real disconnection that takes place except for in our consciousness. So if our consciousness is disconnected from the totality of who we are, and that has a lot to do with how encouraged we feel and how much will we really have, then that's where the lack of power comes in at. And then, it's like falling down. That's why they sometimes call it the fallen ones. It's like coming down falling down a giant ladder after that, because then it's to where you could look to other things such as religions, basically anything outside yourself, for real answers and real truth, because everything will become somewhat I would just say non-identified. So a big part of this is that total realization that you're a magnetar. You're even larger than what the sun looks like. The sun is just actually really close in proximity. We already know that those stars that are out there, many of them are much more larger than the sun. But the reason why they remain so distant, and even more lately, because this is a continuous progress. This is not something that was set in stone 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago, and then now it's said and done with. You don't actually even see most of the times from wherever you're staying stars. Like you see them when you go out to the desert, and you go out there and you see just how many there are, and it's quite majestic. But it also triggers you as a being to the fact of the total realization that is something out there, and that something is you. And then, because, it's not just, okay, you're one star out there. The total realization is that you're actually all of them. And this becomes a bit much to take for obvious reasons. We call it all is self. This means that everything is encompassed inside of this totality that we're existing in now. But if we keep taking a part of it, which happens with our judgments, which happens with our decisions. All these words actually equal division. It's like, okay, I like white, I don't like black, and I like shoes and not sandals. And when that goes on infinitely, all we're doing is just breaking down the energy more and more and more. Hence what phi is about, because that's really the divisions and breaking down things into divisions, but it's all coming from the same source. So the person with the consciousness that begins to realize that they're everything and does this on a consistent basis with total faith in themselves, they actually begin to spin faster. There's the actual mechanics to this. Obviously, many people are familiar with the chakra centers, and the chakras are similar to wheels. And when that wheel, which is synonymous with the person's willpower, it's all connected even within the linguistic language, starts to build, so does this current. But it must be consistent. And obviously, if you're just getting off the block, it's not something that you begin to see immediately. And that's why they say our imagination and our belief is one of the key components to our power and to our success. So this is what it's about. But because there's no limitations in this, what a person truly can believe and conceive begins to build the more they get the proof that, hey, this is limitless. And that's kind of what happened with me in many of my experiences, is that I breached into things that not only gave me the appearance, like that I could just see it, but I can actually feel the potential and the threshold of power that we're talking about. It's actually more than the body physically can even hold. So this means that all of those myths that we're running out of power and that there's scarcity and that, we're going to die and all that is actually false. And a lot of that is a lot of that knowledge and experience is building the structure that it's rebuilding yourself. That's really what this is about. But there's also a key point in actually tearing it down. And this is, of course, the most difficult part, because a lot of times we tend to feel very solid within things like religious structures and concepts of an external God and mastery and as a doctor's degree and these kind of things. A person has gained some kind of solidity. So if they figure out that they have to tear that down in order to accept something greater, sometimes it's not easy, and most of the time it's not very easy to do that. But for those of us that go through that process of what we called earlier the rebirth, tearing it all down and then reconstructing it again, is very akin to like an architect who builds a home first and then realizes that, there's a lot of things that they would change. Like maybe they wouldn't run the pipes in that area. Maybe they would build an extra bathroom over there. So if you ever got a chance to build a house again that you're going to live in, then you're going to design it to exclude the flaws that you found in what you had been living in before. So, that's what we're talking about.